Welcome back to another video for this series. Last video, we got some intelligence on threat actors and threat vectors. This video, we're going to be going over some determining some security vulnerabilities, right? So our first exercise is going to be security concerns and vulnerabilities, right? So outside of course, human error, security flaws and vulnerabilities are usually the primary reason for any breach, right? So for example, an internet-facing application with a critical vulnerability is key to be explored and exploited by a hacker, of course, right? You have cloud-based versus on-premises vulnerabilities. You have 0 days, which pretty much just it exploits technically an unknown vulnerability. It can be only discovered when the software is deployed. But what we're going to dive into on our first task is going to be security updates for email service. So in order to limit the threat of zero-day exploit, Microsoft runs the security updates email service that automatically sends emails out to subscribers that outline security updates to Microsoft software. And there are a lot of reasons why this is helpful knowledge for a security administrator. So although it has its limits with the attack surface as far as zero-day threats, I use them personally for my current employer. Usually every night or every other night or some variant to that, it'll send me, hey, it'll send me a list. Usually it's zero, but it'll send me a list of, hey, this is not a typical email that's sent to this corporation's inbox, blah, 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 blah. But it's only a Splunk thing I had to do, and I had to use my employer email address. But I've actually seen it myself. I actually use it. I mean, I could click on it as far as the links that are in it, but it just lets you know, hey, this is something that's sort of an anomaly. And in some cases, they'll actually have to quarantine the email and they give a specific amount of time to say, hey, you won't be able to access this email until a certain date, and we're done quarantining to make sure everything is good in your file or anything that's in the email rather. So we're at the desktop. Let's open up Microsoft Edge so we can actually take a look at a few things, right? Because we're actually going to see here. So we can actually see that we have the option to actually sign up for security email update alerts, right? So actually, let me see if I can click here. It's supposed to be, I guess this is it. They must have changed it. Now, should redirect us to the Microsoft Live page. I'm not going to sign in or anything. That's going to take up not only a lot of time, but also just some additional things that's not technically necessary to get the point, right? So here it's just telling us that it's going to redirect us, right, to the Microsoft Live login page or Outlook. And if you were to log in, use it whether it's personal or professional, you have the option to sign up for this pretty much this mailing list, right? You can should be able to like subscribe to it, but nonetheless, that's something you could do to help out with determining security vulnerabilities. You can also take a look at any weak configurations. There could be several reasons why an OS, an application or network compliance can suffer from a weak configuration. You have default settings. Of course, you want to change those. Open permissions, unsecured root accounts, errors, weak encryption, unsecure protocols, legacy platforms, which typically have more vulnerabilities than a lot of folks would care to admit, especially if it's taking a while for your business or enterprise to update the particular OS. I mean, while you're still using Windows XP, but that's neither here nor there. So what we're going to do is also take a look at open ports and services. So the nmap and netstack command, those Linux commands, they enable us to discover open ports on a system. So using the nmap command, we can actually perform port scanning of a specific system or more than one system on the network, right? So the netstack command is actually a network information tool that can actually provide information about the network, like the connection routing tables and a few other things as well. So we're actually going to take a look at some routing tables with the command in just a second once I'm able to log into Tally here. So we're going to open up the terminal to take a look at some protocol statistics, all right? And then we're going to do this here. All right, so just also, by the way, I'm not going to scroll all the way back up, but the S that I used at the end, the minus S I used at the end of the command, it just shows the per protocol statistics as far as that particular command. But nonetheless, we see all our details here, right? Showing the, again, the protocol statistics. All right, so now since we can see this information here, we can actually clear it out and we can actually display the active TCP connected transmission control protocol. So, or transport protocol, but nonetheless, go ahead and that here. All right, perfect. So we see the active internet connected to servers and established, right? So pretty much what's active and what it's connected to. So now we're going to use the nmap command. So let's clear this out. Not have much going on there. Then 168. All right, perfect. So pretty much just running a scan, right? It just should show us there it is. A couple results here as far as the TCPs. Looks like they're pretty much all open. The open ports with the protocols as well, right? Port 53, 88, 135. All right, so now that we've taken a look at that, we can clear this out as well. We can actually list the services and their versions running on the system as well with this LS. So we're going to scan again with nmap. All right, perfect. And then perfect. Should be able to click it. There it is. Just flat sometimes. But as a result of the command, right, so that I'm doing now, the scanning, several running services and operating systems are going to be protected, right? Because it's pretty much scanning for everything that's on a local network as far as between these servers. But once that's done, we'll be able to head off to the next command to scan. There it is. All right, perfect. So we can see everything here. All right, the protocols, the ports, and all of that jazz, right? All right, perfect. So now we can actually clear this out. We've seen that. Now we're going to scan for open ports for server systems at once. So take a look at nmap, and then perfect. So as you can see, the 1-25, that'll pretty much let us know several systems at once, pretty much. It's going to take a few, probably a little bit longer than the previous. That was super quick. I don't know if it's the internet or what, but that was super duper quick. But nonetheless, this allows us to move on to our next exercise, which is taking a look at third-party risk. Now, as far as the security configurations that we mentioned in different ways that the attack surface and those vectors within those surfaces can be exploited, there are also third-party risks as far as vendors that enterprises may do business with. So let's say an organization has a robust infrastructure, right? So, but if they're working with third parties, security risks can also increment themselves into multifold. For example, despite having all security controls implemented, right, malware may trigger a third-party communication channel and creep into a network. So you want to make sure you have proper vendor management, supply chain network management as well, outsourced code development, and also data storage as well, because these again could be overlooked, forgotten, and in between, and it could make a mountain out of a molehill. But nonetheless, we can move forward with the next exercise. And taking a look at improper or weak patch management, right? Patch management. But improper or weak patch management, right? It can lead to several security risks. So our organization, right, if not patching systems properly, cannot meet certain regulatory requirements, right? So such as the ISO 27001, the PCI DSS, or HIPAA, as far as between healthcare and the financial industry, right? It could be your internal policies that you have to adhere to. That's where GRC comes in, and they're so important, right? So an organization may also not be able to protect its infrastructure for cyber attacks or malware. They have improper or weak patch management. So we're actually going to be doing a few things in our exercise now is analyzing hosts on the network using what's called the Microsoft Baseline Security Analyzer. So we're actually going to swivel over to DC01 and let's see here. All right, so let's open up the actual application. All right, perfect. computer. All right, I'm just going to do a regular scan. I'm not going to get fancy or anything, do anything crazy. Oh, okay. There it is. Finally loads. All right, so let's see, DCO1. Let's see. Yeah, that's fine. All the defaults are good. So just want to note also the security analyzer that we're currently using. Let's see. Yeah, I figured. Yeah, so it's downloaded the security update information from Microsoft, and by doing that, it may take a little bit longer than possibly anticipated with just a typical scan. So I'll put us on the other side of that in just a moment. You'll be right at the end of that the scanning. All right, so it looked like it was sort of it tried to complete the scan, right? But it showed that the automatic update system service is not running, unfortunately, on this particular host. So that means that there are some updates being installed on this OS. Also, want to take a note that CAB file cannot be, let's see, the file cannot be downloaded. But nonetheless, that's typically how you would just do a normal run-of-the-mill scan as far as using Microsoft Baseline Security Analyzer. Not anything special or different as far as with anything else. And briefly, really quick before we end the video, I just want to go over a few impacts as far as security vulnerabilities. So there could be several impacts, right? The attack on an individual, organization, individual, identity theft, credential, stealing, a host of amongst other things, right? Especially hopefully they're not a personal stalker or anything extreme, but that could be to an individual enterprise. We talk about reputation, data, loss of jobs potentially, or restructuring of the organization to make sure that they're within the framework that they need to be within in order to have proper placement of their policies or configuration controls, right? So, so their impact could be, I guess, kind of similar in nature, but the magnitude of the attacks, of course, can definitely differ because you're talking about an enterprise could potentially have thousands of families that are affected versus just one individual or one family, right? Which could be up to, 2 to 3 to 4 or 5 folks, at least on average, right? For example, so a data loss for an individual can be devastating, right? But the impact on an organization is usually much larger. So the data belonging to an organization, while it's not necessarily in the grand scheme of things, more important, but it has more impact because of how much data, the scale, right? So the value is a bit different, right? Also want to briefly bring up a data loss. It just occurs when you lose data, of course. I mean, it's exactly in the terms what it sounds like. Or the storage of a device becomes non-functional or corrupt, like if you did something really weird to your USB drive, it has something very important in there. Now you have a data loss because you can't recover it, right? There are ways, but typically for the average person, it's pretty much gone, right? So you also have data breaches, which is again self-explanatory. One of the biggest threats in cloud computing, actually, and usually it's like confidential, critical personal information is stolen or accessed by unauthorized identity, typically a threat actor. Data exfiltration, right? So someone owns every piece of data, right? It could be an individual or an organization. So the person who owns the data, they have to permit someone to copy or transfer the data from one place to another or from one system to another. However, when data copying or even transferring, right, for it to take place without the permission of the owner is known as data exfiltration. Now, identity theft, like I mentioned earlier, financial implications, reputation impact, availability loss, and things of that nature, as far as the impact of the wrong vulnerability, right? That's why they have different scores because of different impacts that they may have to a particular enterprise, right? So just for a brief recap, while we reach the end of the video, so we've done a few things. We went over security concerns or vulnerabilities, third-party risks, and improper or weak patch management, and the impact of everything aforementioned, right? So next video, we're going to go over security assessment techniques to make sure that we can prevent some of the things that I mentioned towards the end there, as far as mitigating the impact of some of these things that potentially happen when the wrong person undercovers or intentionally exploits a vulnerability. So again, this is the end of the video. I'll see you in the next one.